guys? Stu here. So earlier this week I was lucky enough to get myself over to an advanced screening of Get Out, which is a new horror film from the mind of Jordan Peele, which is the Peele half of Key and Peele, the comedy sketch group who are fucking hilarious. So needless to say, I was very excited to check this one out because I'm a big fan of Key and Peele's comedy. I think they're hilarious. I think Jordan Peele is a hilarious guy, so I was interested to see what it'd do with the horror genre, because that's just not something I ever thought would happen or come to fruition there. But also everyone who's seen it already has been like, yeah, this is fucking phenomenal. It was at 100% for a short while, which is mental. I was kind of skeptical about this film after seeing the trailer, just because I don't know if the trailer did this film too many favours. It looked almost like a weird M. Night Shyamalan style horror. Just the bit in the trailer where the guy's running at him, I was like, this feels odd. Feels like it could go down an M. Night Shyamalan route in which I probably won't like it. But I held on hope for my boy Jordan Peele. Everyone was saying it was good. And I gotta say, after seeing the film, yeah, this is a fucking fantastic film. I honestly had such a great time with Get Out. I loved it. And if you haven't heard about the basic premise of this one, is that it's a horror film around the fact that a black guy is going to meet the family of his white girlfriend. She's never had a black boyfriend before. She hasn't told him that he's black. And so it's all about how, let's say, welcoming her family might be towards a black boyfriend, because it's something that hasn't happened before in their family. And even though she assures him that they're not racists and that he voted for Obama, there's just something a little bit off about the reception he gets. And it is led by actually some really great performances, which I wasn't expecting to get from a horror comedy directed by Jordan Peele. So in the lead role is Daniel Kaluuya, who we've seen in previous films before, like Sicario. That's the one that comes to mind. He's a British actor, but he's playing an American guy, and he does a fantastic job with the accent. But he is really fantastic in the film, and without spoiling too much, it's a sort of character and performance where you have to bring a certain element of sort of disorientation to it in order for much of the stuff that happens in the film to work. And I think he nails that side of things. There's certain sequences in the film where he just sort of goes through, and he is the audience's way into those scenes. And so he does do a very good job of nailing that kind of what the fuck is actually going on here attitude that you would have as a character like this. So he smashes that side of things. But he's also very funny in a very kind of dry and blunt sense. There are certain things that his character says and does in the film which I just think are hilarious. But alongside him in the film as his girlfriend is Alison Williams, who, as far as I'm aware, hasn't actually acted in anything before. This is her first feature film in a performance side of things. I believe she was a musician before, and she does a really solid job as well. At first I was kind of annoyed by her. I don't know why. I was just like, please shut the fuck up whenever you're talking. But I kind of got past that, and actually as the film went on, I really enjoyed seeing her on screen as well. I really enjoyed seeing her and Daniel Kaluuya's relationship on screen evolve throughout the film. So I think the two of them did a really good job together. Everyone else from the supporting side of things does a really solid job, and the two leads are really fantastic as well there. But the main thing I loved about this film, which I think is jumping out to a lot of people, is the direction from Jordan Peele. Who fucking knew Jordan Peele had a film like this in him? Honestly, who knew that? In terms of direction and writing, which he did both of, and the vision of this film, it's just one of the most interesting and unique horror films I've seen for a long time. And you can sort of see the similarities between this and a lot of his sketch work before, which I absolutely loved. I like seeing people's visions kind of evolve through time, and you're like, yeah, this is clearly coming from the mind of this guy. That's awesome. But just in the sense that the whole thing is sort of like a what-if scenario that's kind of heightened to the max and is made into an entire feature-length horror film is awesome to me. And he really does smash it in this one. It's a really interestingly directed little horror comedy flick. Mainly the tone that he's able to create works so well for everything that happens in this film. Because there's a risk with horror comedies that you either go too far on the horror front that the comedy stuff doesn't work, or you do it vice versa, so it's not actually scary but it is really funny. And I think different people might argue with this point, but I think on a whole he does a really fantastic job of balancing that out. It's funny when it needs to be funny, and when it is funny it's fucking hilarious, but it is also really creepy and disturbing when it needs to be. I wouldn't say it's scary in the sense that it stuck with me for like weeks after I saw it and that I couldn't get to sleep. It's not scary in that sense, but it is scary in the kind of in the moment sense where I'm tense and I'm kind of dreading what I'm seeing and I'm fucking on the edge of my seat. So whilst I haven't been losing sleep over how scary this film was, it's disturbing and unsettling in exactly the right ways it needs to be. So I guess it makes sense that the director of this film is someone that knows comedy in and out, and also seems to love and know horror in and out. But also in terms of the way the film looks, the way it's shot in that sense, and the cinematography, it's a very good looking film as well, and there are actually some sequences of quite striking and beautiful direction. Particularly the sunken sequences. I will not go any further into that because it will spoil it for you if you haven't seen the film. But if you have seen the film, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Those sequences were actually really quite beautiful to watch. And I was not expecting it to be a film like that. I kind of thought it was just going to be a fun little horror comedy that I get for and I'd be like, yeah, that was fun, but I kind of forgot about it quite quickly. it actually ended up being some of the most striking direction and beautiful direction I've seen in a horror film for a long, long time. So I have to give Jordan Peele props for that. It's very imaginative and creative in the way it directs certain things. That was awesome to see. And from the writing side of things, it's equally as amazing. It is just such a sharp and witty screenplay here. It just worked on basically every level, and I had such a good time with it. But yeah, I was just generally very happy with the way the story went, and interested by the way it tackles certain conventions and cliches of the genre, especially when it comes to the more kind of heated topics of racism that it deals with in the film, because it is a very satirical film and it does have a lot to say about specific topics, particularly racism. And I think there was a somewhat skepticism as to how well it would execute those things. And I'm happy to say it does it in a much more interesting way than I expected, in that it uses a lot of the conventions of the horror genre and the way we're used to seeing things in cinema, and then sort of flips it on its head, and in that sense makes us think about some of the things it's trying to make us think about in terms of race. And I just was floored by that side of things. I was incredibly surprised and just interested at how it tackles that stuff. That was just awesome to see. And I think that's what just kind of steps it up a little bit from a usual kind of horror comedy that's just a fun time. It is a horror comedy that's fun to watch and is entertaining, but it does have stuff to say, and it says it well. I do have one very slight problem with some of the direction in this film, and that is mainly the pacing, in that the final act of the film, or the climax of the film, when shit starts to kick into high gear and you know what's going on and they're just dealing with it, can feel slightly rushed in the context of the overall film, just because the first half does take a lot of time to slowly go through things, and then when you find it out, it's just sort of like blah 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 blah. And that's only something that I start to notice in retrospect, looking back on the film. It's not actually something that jumped out when I was watching it, so in that sense it didn't really get in the way of me enjoying it whilst I was watching the film. But I don't know, I feel like it could have benefited from a little bit more in the final act. But that also might just be me being selfish, in that I had such a good time with the final act of this film and the way it wraps up that I just wanted more of it. So at the end of the day, Get Out is a really, really fantastic little horror comedy gem. I loved it. I had such a good time with it, and I cannot wait to watch it again. Definitely believe the hype. It's one of those films which is getting a lot of hype, and I was scared it might undermine it, but it is actually a fucking fantastic film, so you should be excited for this one. I'm going to go ahead and give it a very, very high 4 stars. Almost a 5 stars. And it probably will go up to a 5 stars on next viewing, I'm sure. But right now, I'm not sure I can say it is a 5-star film. But what about you guys? Have you seen Get Out yet? I know it's already out over in the US, so you guys can comment below what you thought about it. Over here in the UK, it doesn't come out until, I believe, the 17th of March. So you've got a little while to go before it comes out. But if you have seen it early like me, let me know what you thought in the comments below. And if you're excited to check it out, let me know in the comments below as well. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this video and want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.